and welcome to Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Ocran, welcoming you to Ghana's foremost developmental program and that place where the greatest minds in the world converge. Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Ghana and the Enterprise Group with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. This program is also powered by the Ghana Growth Program, a collaboration between Mastercard Foundation and the Springboard Roadshow Foundation. So today we travel across the seas to the Netherlands, a country we've been observing for a while in this journey to try and make agric and agribusiness exciting for our young people. And so in the course of our research, we found out that a country about a sixth of the size of Ghana is the second, in terms of revenue, the second largest exporter of food in the world next to the USA. To help us understand the how, the why, the engine of the adventure in the Netherlands, I met, should I say, miraculously, Quadt, who is originally Nigerian, who is based in the Netherlands and is an agri consultant working with a company, Delphy, that has expertise in food and flowers. And you know what? Today we want to open the Netherlands engine and see what is inside. So please welcome to Ghana and also to Springboard.
Thank you very much, Albert, for having me.
Right. What do you think of the idea of making agriculture attractive to young people in the continent?
It's a very critical idea because the continent is challenged with the demographics. We are one of the youngest continents in the world, and there's a challenge also with youth unemployment. And agriculture, because of the span of the entire chain, provides room for not just employment, but for innovation and transformation and building the blocks for food security and nutrition across our continent. And it's critical that young people take on the challenge of driving the sector and building the sector and bringing out the potential that is within the sector.
So talking about potential, this show has been running since August of 2008. And the centerpiece of Springboard as a radio, TV, and online broadcast is e-learning, providing an educational platform that helps young people, especially to discover their potential and be the very best that they can be. And by extension, we also connect with the business community and people in different demographics. But the critical observation that has led us to embark on this program called the Ghana Growth Program is the fact that originally many young people see agriculture as something for the rural poor, the uneducated, not financially rewarding, not something that you can proudly say, well, guess what? I'm into agribusiness. It's not something that people would say in the past. It's changed now and it's changing. And so those programs set out to change mindsets of young people and make them look far more favorably towards the agricultural sector that promises to create wealth and job security for our young people. And I must say that the journey has been quite exciting so far, especially the more we've brought successful people and shared successful models, the more we've seen young people embrace the opportunities and the ideas that have worked elsewhere. So let's take the Netherlands as a country. Small country. I've been, like it for its coolness. It's not a very, to use a Ghanaian word, giddy place. It's a very calm, cool place, but very prosperous, very effective. Tell me, what is the secret of the success of the Netherlands, especially in the area of agric exports?
I think the Netherlands' trajectory and success within agricultural exports rest on several pillars. And I'll describe it as, of course, first, the human capital, and developing that human capital, knowledge, a knowledge base, and then innovation and technology underpins knowledge, and then a very, very focused policy on internalization of the sector. So these pillars are really what drives the sector. And I'm not sure if you're aware of that as well. Outside of just being the biggest food exporter after the US, the number one agricultural university in the world is also based in the Netherlands, Wageningen University for Research. That's my alma mater. But there is a very, very close collaboration between government, the sector, and knowledge. And we call it the Dutch diamond. And it's this very close collaboration that drives the sector and the sectorial innovation and technology that is developed for the sector, for the local market, and also the international market.
I'm going to come to the diamond, but if I'm getting you right, so far you've touched on human capital.
Yes.
You've touched on knowledge, touched on technology and innovation. You've mentioned policy, in particular, and internationalization of the industry, and then you've also showed that these are not just isolated pillars; they are in a diamond,
Yes.
diamond, and so are working together. There's a lot of talk here about collaboration between industry and academia to be able to be more productive, but we've not seen it an uptake at the level that we would love as a country. Let's go back several years. In every comparison or in every discussion about the success of a country, let's say the Singapore, South Korean example, the Netherlands example, other countries, even Britain, people roll back to a period when they were just like most of Africa, not every part, but significant parts of Africa where there is food insufficiency, there is significant poverty and illiteracy, and then trace a certain intentional process of getting to where they are now. And that's where the whole discussion begins. Would you say that there is a point like that in the history of the Netherlands where they had a similar situation like us? And maybe how did they come out of it to where they are now?
Definitely, most definitely. Historically, after the Second World War, actually the Netherlands was occupied by Germany, and food insecurity was rife, and human starvation was part of the German policy. And so after the liberation, the government wanted to ensure food production and food security, and there was a decision made on a governmental level to be able to ramp up food production at a very quick pace. And it was determined that there was going to be a government's focus to ensure food security first, and then also the export potential within that sector. So that meant that investments needed to be made in building institutional frameworks driven by policy. So that's where policy and institution comes in, and not just governmental institutions, but knowledge institutions. And then with the knowledge institutions, then you have, of course, research and development that goes into technology and innovative technology that is suited to the needs of that time, and also the context, climatic, social, political, and economic as well. So this was we would say, the beginning point for the drive to develop the sector historically.
So watching that over a 60, 50, 60, 70 year period, how have they managed to sustain the tempo and gotten to the place where it is now?
The sector has developed itself based on its very peculiar needs, because the climatic conditions in the Netherlands are very peculiar to the Netherlands.
Describe it.
Yeah, we are a sea-based country, and we deal with wetness, humidity, a cold climate, and temperate conditions. So that means in the winter months you cannot grow food outside. And so this meant that a controlled environment agriculture needed to be developed, and that's where the greenhouse technology took off from. And within that concept is trying to manage every environmental condition to optimize the cultivation.
I did travel to Amsterdam. I've done Amsterdam quite a few times, and anytime I get there, the reality that you are more than half the country below sea level is my first shock. And then the other one is the thought that a ship can be passing right in front of your door. I mean, you have canals that go through the whole country. They are man-made, aren't they?
Yes.
You have canals going through the whole country, and literally you can be in your bedroom and see a ship passing full of containers. It almost strikes me as a disadvantaged country. So to be, I mean, in quotes, so to be able to use the limited resources you have to feed yourselves and export, as it were, to become the second largest in the world in terms of revenue, it's almost like a slap on the wrist for us that we have so much and are doing so little. So I'm listening with rapt attention because, I mean, the more you describe, the more I'm like, where did we get it wrong?
Okay.
You are Nigerian by birth.
Yeah.
And Ghana and Nigeria are twins in terms of the peculiar circumstances that we face. When you get back to your original home in Nigeria, don't you feel the same way about why don't we export the success that we're having here to West Africa?
I do, but you use the terminology that is very, very central to the Dutch way of thinking, is using the very limited resources that we have to produce more. So doing less with more. That is what underpins the policy approach, the innovation, the technology, and drives the knowledge base. And drives both the infrastructure that is built around the entire sector, and also the knowledge intensity, because we're a small country. In terms of trading, the Netherlands also has a very strong trade history. Even during colonial times, they were a spice hub for the rest of the world. So knowing that they're a small country, they are very dependent on international relations and trade. And so that's the mentality that drives it. We're small, we're very dependent on the international trade, and our land mass is very small. So how do we make use of these very limited resources that we have in terms of people, in terms of land, to maximize our potential across the world? So building collaboration, it's very important. Driving the depth and the scope of knowledge is very important. Constant innovation based on data and facts is extremely important. And then the evolution of technology and knowledge is quite important. And this was homegrown, first to ensure self-sufficiency in food production, despite the climatic variance and challenges, and then trading with that knowledge and with the produce that is produced. So we also play a very vital role in logistics. The Rotterdam port, when you look in the world, the first top 10 ports, Rotterdam comes, as small as we are amongst the top 10 ports.
Is it a geographic, is it a locational advantage? Is it a policy advantage? What is working so well in terms of, let's even settle on the logistics part of it. Somebody said, listen, by virtue of the fact that Ghana is the port that has an artery to West Africa's landlocked countries, it should naturally be the place where everyone routes, whether they are in Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, they don't have ports, seaports, and they don't have canals like you do. So they should naturally pass their goods through here. But that would, apart from locational advantage, there should also be a policy advantage that makes them say Ghana and not Togo, or Takrady and not maybe Ivory Coast, Abidjan. What, even in the area of logistics, what is the Netherlands' strategy or advantage from where you sit?
Human determination that is now backed by policy and then infrastructure and knowledge. And it starts from the human vision that, because we have a neighbor, Belgium, they also have a port. But we set ourselves apart to be able to stay competitive and to innovate around the infrastructure. And I think at the port now in Rotterdam, they are developing a system where you have as little as possible human intervention, and it's all done with machinery and robotics. So it keeps evolving and not staying where it is. It keeps evolving, it keeps growing. Innovation is a constant. It doesn't stop.
I'll come back to the innovation. Let me take you to your favorite area, which is research and development. I spoke to a friend of mine who's a professor involved in agricultural research, doing some fantastic work at Legon, Professor Damkwa, and he's been celebrated all across the world. And he says, considering some of the amazing things we are doing here, if we had the support for our research work, it would make a real difference. How focused is the support for research and development in the Netherlands? That's where you operate.
Yeah, I think I would use the story of the company that I work with, Delphy BV, as an example. 30 years ago, Delphy was the Ministry of Agriculture's extension services.
Okay.
And it got privatized because the government decided that the sector had evolved enough for the government not to be involved in provision of extension services, but the market should drive the provision of extension services, research and development. So that decision was made about 30 years ago, and the responsibility was placed on the market. And the market also realized that as a standalone company, you cannot do it by yourself. So they did organize themselves into sectorial specializations where you pool your financial resources together and then you can fund and finance research. So across the world now, we do host, I think, some of the biggest seed production companies in the world, and they all pool in millions of euros. For example, one company could spend 100 million on just research and development alone.
Wow.
For their product. And then they realize that if you pull 5 together, that's 500 million. It's a significant amount of resources.
So there's the budget, there's the willingness to support.
Oh yeah, they run and fund their research because they've grown to the extent that they do that, and quite a few have their own research facilities, and we also as consultants have our own research facilities, and the sector comes to us and the government comes to us to say research on this aspect for us. But one aspect of research that is extremely important is research should then result to practice. So research doesn't stand isolated either. It is industry driven so that there is a very close link between both, because at the end of the day, it should be economically viable and it should be relevant for the market. So when you do research, it should not stand alone. It should feed into the funnel of the market, and it drives the efficiency and the productivity that results from the market function. So that's also quite unique. So there's a very close collaboration between research institutions, whether they're private or they're public, and then industry, and they feed into each other. So research is driven to meet industry needs, and then the government policy also feeds into that funnel of what does industry need at this moment in terms of knowledge and support from a policy framework. How do we make sure that they are sustainable? How do we ensure longevity? How do we ensure a good profit base? How do we ensure that the labor that comes out of our knowledge institutions are always relevant for employment in the sector?
This is Springboard, your virtual university. My guest for today is Quadt. She is based in the Netherlands and she's an agri consultant working with Delphy. And they are into global expertise in flowers and food. And her area of strength is research and development. And she's blowing my mind, letting me know how much resources are available for R&D. And I guess I'm licking my lips saying, if Ghana's R&D institution's got so much support, there is so much that we can do. And that is what we are trying to do, to open up how a country the size of probably the Ashanti region, 1/6 of Ghana, can be responsible for being the second largest in terms of revenue exporter of food next to the United States of America. What are they doing right? How did they travel from a country that couldn't feed itself after the World War to the world's second largest exporter in terms of revenue. What can we learn and how do we make that real in our lives? And so far, peace is helping us to understand the role of human capital, the role of knowledge and learning institutions, the role of technology and innovation, the role of policy, especially an internationalization drive that is built into what they do. Always think of not just local consumption, but also exports. And then she's mentioned collaboration. You can't do it alone. And the thing that caught my attention the most, Peace, is when you say human determination. I'm asking myself, are we not determined enough? Isn't it obvious that if we don't feed ourselves, we can't do anything else? And those are the thoughts that are going through my mind as we have this conversation. But if you just tuned in, call somebody, let's have this conversation. How do we make this potentially vibrant sector exciting for our young people so that 5 years from now, when Peace swings by on one of her global tours, we can compare this and see, wow, imagine 5 years ago when we spoke. So much has changed since then. Let's stay with policy and then also research and how it drives action. One of the things that you hear sometimes is that in our part of the world, we go for international conferences, we hear all the resolutions we sign and the documents come back, and sometimes even draft policy, but it ends on the shelf and doesn't reflect in the day-to-day work in the various parts of the agribusiness value chain. You talk about a seemingly seamless flow between the Netherlands diamond or the Dutch diamond that you mentioned. How do we ensure that there's the same congruence here between policy? You've traveled African countries. Have you spotted anyone that you're saying, okay, they seem to be getting it right?
Well, it's a journey, and it's not a journey that is devoid of challenges. Like anywhere in the world where you're dealing with people from different disciplines, there's always friction, but you decide that you leave the friction aside, or you try to work out the friction, and every party focuses on the goal and the long term or the bigger picture. Yeah. For countries in Africa that I would say are trying to get it right, it's not perfect. I would give two examples. I would give the example of South Africa. South Africa has gone through also the same challenges that we have across the continent in terms of inflation. But just because the local food production levels are quite high, and then you have the export-oriented production as well, that has helped buffer the economic challenges that the entire world is facing. They do have their infrastructural challenges. We see that energy is becoming a problem, and energy and hard infrastructure like roads and rail services or waterways are extremely vital for the development and the sustenance of the sector. And you see now that there are energy challenges within that country that is disruptive to the production, and the port infrastructure that is very essential for exports is also overburdened. But these are things that are part of the journey, and with a right policy focus can be resolved.
But their biggest strength, you say, is adequate local production for local consumption, at least first.
Yeah.
And that's a starting point. Yes. Would you say that should be a standard starting point for everyone?
That should be a starting point, because you cannot focus on export if you cannot feed yourself.
Feed yourself first.
Food security and self-sufficiency is an essential ingredient for any nation. And when we look at the EU, within each country, that is the first focus before export. But sometimes in Africa we do it reverse. But you should be able to sustain yourself, produce a significant portion of your own food, and then you turn to the export markets, because it's people who are well-fed with good balanced nutrition who are able to learn and develop knowledge and solutions that are very localized within your context. And you also spoke about going for conferences and learning policies and looking at technologies. Technology is always localized. The Dutch technology was built around the very typical agricultural context within the Netherlands. Because the soils were dredged from the sea, that gives it a very unique composition that you need to then understand how do you treat that soil, how do you deal with the soil. The climatic conditions and the temperatures also determines the level of and the type of technology and innovation. So it's the local context and the local needs, the local goals that drive the innovation and the technologies. So it's not, you cannot really say there is a copy and paste model. You can learn a few things from a success story, but locally, there has to be a depth of knowledge and innovation that provides very unique solutions for the local context. For example, Ghana, you have several climatic conditions and several soil types. In the north, the soil conditions are very different from the south or the Volta region that is more water and forest, and the north is more arid. So technological applications that fit the Volta cannot be applied completely in arid conditions. A completely different set of innovation, technology, and a different approach on how you treat the soils and how you would grow crops there and what kind of crops you can grow within that climatic conditions need to be considered. So
Absolutely.
There's not one size fits all.
But that's where you come in.
Yes, exactly.
And so I'm just imagining that with the kind of resource and the kind of expertise you have, I mean, if you were deployed, if Delphy was deployed in Ghana, you would typically advise on which type of crops to focus on in the north, how the financing should be, cycles, irrigation.
Exactly.
There are solutions that should be, the principles will remain the same. The application will be contextualized. Exactly. Which other country would you say has caught your attention that is worth mentioning?
Egypt and Kenya. Kenya has adapted a lot from the Netherlands in terms of the flour and the horticulture production. And the technologies they have adapted to their very local context. And I would use a very simple example. In the Netherlands, we grow in the greenhouses. We don't grow on soil. We grow on a medium. And the medium is typically based on substrates. That's a general word. But that soil medium comes from coconut husk that is produced somewhere in Sri Lanka and India. But the Dutch has fine-tuned that raw material to be able to use as a medium to replace soil in the greenhouses and in the cultivation. But in Kenya, they still cultivate on soil.
Because they have an abundance of land.
Exactly, but then combined with the greenhouse technology.
Okay.
Yeah. So they've taken some sort of technology but adapted it to their local context and feasibility and economic feasibility and are still able to meet the very stringent international export standards.
To be competitive enough to export their flowers
Exactly.
to Accra, Ghana, and make good money.
And the everyday exports of flowers leave from Kenya to the Dutch exchange, the flower exchange, which is the biggest in the world. And it's a 24-hour cycle. It leaves from Kenya, it gets to Holland, it is then traded, and then it leaves the Netherlands across the world in the morning.
And I'm sure the logistics is well oiled and is seamless.
Yes.
You know what, Peace? The more you talk, the more I see that human determination backed by policy and innovation can take any country with any limitation to the place where they ought to be, not the place where they are. I'll go for a break. When I come back, I'm going to tell you about my observations in Morocco.
Okay.
And women cooperatives working with argan oil, etc., etc. And I'm going to find out from you your own personal journey and the learnings on your journey that brought you to where you are. And let's make this a bit more personal. Let's find out what you have encountered on your journey and what you have observed that has made you the professional that you are. If you just joined us, this is Springboard Virtual University. I had the privilege of meeting Peace Quadt at Greater Works Conference. She flew in for the conference and I had the honor and privilege of meeting her, and in our conversation, I found out her expertise and said, why not? Let's sit down and let's talk about your area of work. And the more we spoke, the more I found out that there's so much we can glean from the example of the Netherlands. Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Ghana and the Enterprise Group, with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. This program is also powered by the Ghana Grows Program, a collaboration between the MasterCard Foundation and Springboard Roadshow Foundation, essentially inspiring young people to look for decent and fulfilling careers in the agribusiness, ATVET extended value chains. If you would like to find out, you're a young person, especially a young woman aged between 15 and 35, and would like to find out opportunities in this value chain, the number to call or WhatsApp is 030-8255-775. That number will give you access to the Ghana Grows call center. Let's go for a break. When we come back, let's get into the engine a bit more in the Netherlands and also find out from Peace her own journey and her learnings. Please enjoy.
Hello? Bye.
Well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird is the word. Bird is the word. Well, don't you know about the bird? Well, everybody knows that the bird is the word. Bird is the word.
To consider the implications.
Hello? Everybody knows that the bird is the word. When
Whether it's 1924, 2024, or 2124, we've always known that you are driven by your sense of safety and well-being. It is what drives us to see you through from start to finish, from small to big. And in the last 100 years, as you have evolved, so have we also expanded to serve you in many ways. From cradle to grave, with expertise in insurance, life, pensions, properties, health, and for those beautiful memorable goodbyes. It's 2024, and in all our markets, our pedigree is recognized, our strength respected, our expertise valued, and our solutions sought by all who desire an advantage in life. Experience the time-tested and truly trusted 100 years legacy of Ghana's oldest insurer. Take charge of your future now. Insurance, life, pensions, property management, funeral services, health insurance. Enterprise, your advantage.
This be me, Kobe, aka Kobe Boga, KB for short. And this is my sweetheart, Obahima. Today, I get big surprise for her. Charlie, gone are the days I couldn't spoil my girl. Now I'm engaged to the woman of my dreams. Don't just look at my success. To get here, I had to follow the process. Out of nowhere, I lost my job. But I believe in humble beginnings. I got an idea that I knew I could grow. I started from a small setup, then invested in growing my own coconuts. I then grew my product lines. Now, I sell to many supermarkets in the country. Fellow young Ghanaians, trust the process and keep hope alive.
Take advantage of Agribusiness through the Ghana Grows program. Ghana Grows, Hope Day.
Welcome back to Springboard, your virtual university, and to this incredible conversation with Peace Quadt, based in Netherlands, who's been sharing with us about the journey of the Netherlands and how they've been intentional about using agribusiness or agriculture as leverage, among other things, to become a major exporter in the world. She's been sharing some thoughts about research and development, human capital, knowledge, technology and innovation, logistics and haulage, policy, and then collaboration. She also has mentioned what she calls human determination as a driver for the accomplishments in the Netherlands. Let me quickly mention the Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Ghana and the Enterprise Group with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group, also powered by the Ghana Grows Program, a collaboration between MasterCard Foundation and the Springboard Roadshow Foundation. Just to mention the Enterprise Advantage tip for today, and it's about the difference between home insurance and content insurance. And the response is simply this, that content insurance focuses on the valuables other than the building in the home, whereas in the broader context, home insurance includes the value of the building and its content. So you know what to do when buying insurance for your home. Buy the home insurance that is absolutely comprehensive. This is brought to you by the Enterprise Group, and the number to call them on 030-263-4777. Email info@myenterprisegroup.io. Enterprise, your advantage. Please welcome back to the second segment of this conversation. And before we went on the break, you were telling me about countries that you thought had done something right. The South African example of at least feeding themselves, growing enough to feed themselves locally as a base for the agricultural adventure. You mentioned also Kenya, that had done something that you thought was good, modeling the flour business from the Netherlands. And then you also mentioned Egypt. I observed a bit of the Moroccan model and their use of women in cooperatives to do work in argan oil. Morocco is very export focused, it seems. I was very curious about that. I also looked at their work in pottery and ceramics. And I remember visiting some very rural settings where ceramics were being done. And I found out that there had been a policy decision that all of them that were using furnaces that used wood should shift to gas-based furnaces that were several times stronger and also environmentally friendly. And it was backed by the financing to be able to get them all to use those furnaces. And I was just following through the policy issue and the spread of it. But the one that caught my attention the most is going to a very, very rural community and finding an isolated place where they were doing carpets. And when I tried to pay for the carpet, I was wondering if I didn't have money. They said, "Oh, we take payments by card." And they went to bring a point of sale machine, and I asked them, "Wow, deep inside this village, you have a point of sale machine?" They said, once again, they said it was a policy decision. The king made sure we had these machines so we can do our business and export. So I'm just looking at the intentionality of policy, the rollout and the uptake, and how it enabled the various parts of the value chain to operate. And that's just something that caught my attention while we're doing our research preparing for this project. Have you done Morocco?
I have colleagues who actually work in Morocco, and Morocco is also a very important trade partner for the EU because they do a lot of citrus production that is exported. But just to put it in a general perspective, when our countries or any country focuses on export production, don't forget that you're using the resources of the country to feed that export. And our country's resources are all finite. They do have limits. And for example, across the world, the landed resources and the water resources are two resources that are intensively used for agricultural production. And you see a situation now where Morocco, because of climate change, water becomes a problem, and the water resources are almost used up for the agricultural export market, and their local people, they need water. And a lot of countries who are facing that problem, who are coastal countries, are now going into building desalination plants. And of course, when you take the seawater and then you remove the salt, the residue, the salt residue, has to be emptied back. And that also causes even further environmental degradation. And I'll bring the example a little bit closer home to the Netherlands. When we went into very intensive cultivation, that meant that there was excessive use of nitrogen fertilizers that have gone to pollute the groundwater and our water bodies. And now we have problems with algae blooms that cover the water, and then it sucks out the oxygen for the water life, and fishes die. And then of course for human use, there are skin inflammations when you bath or you swim in such water bodies. So with agricultural production, there is the upside, of course, of intensifying, but intensifying needs to come with a certain awareness of the environmental impacts and how to mitigate these impacts. And I do believe that in this crossroads is where Africa's opportunity lies, because we can learn from the rest of the world what worked, and we can also learn what didn't work or what was not foreseen, and put that or incorporate that into our planning. And from the Netherlands now, I mentioned initially that our agricultural or horticultural process, it's a journey. We are learning, and we're still learning. And based on government's policy, there's a drive now to do things with more attention to the environment. And we're looking at what is called a more bio-based production, or a greener type of production, where we use less inputs but to produce more. And that is very data driven, because there is a certain precision that needs to be achieved based on knowledge and data. And in return, we also look into what we call a circular framework, where residual waste from agricultural production is revalued and put back into the chain. And you have a circle where there is little waste, but you can value whatever waste comes out of production. So if I would use, for example, cocoa, and the husk that comes out of cocoa production, that is thrown away or burnt, or it becomes an environmental nuisance because of the way it's disposed of. But in technological sense and opportunity, it also creates the raw material for creating energy when you burn it. And then the residue that comes from that could also be integrated back into the soils to improve the soil. And then one aspect of improvement we also look at is looking at the production from an integrated perspective. So we look at even pest management from an integrated perspective. Instead of using chemicals, how can you use natural enemies for dealing with pests or dealing with fungal or bacterial diseases? And because of that need to reduce chemical use in the production based on the impacts it has on human health, that has also driven innovation into areas where pest management is done more naturally than chemical based. And we do that also for the soils, looking at a more integrated approach to how do you manage soil fertilities outside of just chemical fertilizers. How do you look at it holistically and prefer holistic solutions?
Interesting one there. So you're showing us the downsides of what appears to be an exciting journey that Africa, coming from behind, can learn from what did not work for the countries that have been intense in terms of the agricultural expression. it's also evident that, obviously, considering land size and volumes, the intensity is naturally going to have this effect. In our part of the world, the environmental degradation that you mentioned is predominantly driven by illegal mining activity that pollutes our water bodies and has the effect on the soil that you describe. And so, how do we find the balance between the quest, in the agricultural sense, the quest to achieve our aspirations, and then also the balance to ensure that we don't destroy ourselves in the process?
Okay.
Sustainability, how do you achieve it?
Thank you for that. But I think it's not just the what you call galamsey that destroys the land. You find that land is cultivated excessively here over a period of time, and then the soil loses all its nutrients, and then new land needs to be sourced, and that means cutting down forests and opening new agricultural lands. And from research now, we know that with the reduction of forests across the world, then the temperature levels within the country also rises concurrently. So that's also a problem. And I would say the first way of mitigating that problem is to optimize the production of the existing fields, because there is such huge yield gaps that if you can optimize your production and make it more efficient, then your yields go up and then the economic returns on a specific size of land. So it's not about the size of the land, it's about how productive is that land and how efficient is the land used.
Talking about efficiency, I can immediately see how coconut husks and cocoa husks, what we typically will destroy and burn could be substrates for the production of mushrooms,
Exactly.
of horticultural products and so on, using the precision technology that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And those are new areas that our young people could be looking at. I'm going to come to you to close out on what you think our young people should be focusing on as they venture into these areas. But let's find out what got you into this space, the agricultural, agribusiness, and R&D space, and what brought you into Ghana? What would make you travel all the way from the Netherlands to Ghana to come and spend the week?
Okay, I think I came into Ghana to attend the Greater Works Conference, and I followed that conference for the last 3-4 years online. And I made a conscious decision last year that I wanted to attend it live. So that was really the reason for coming here. I combined it a little bit with some work on exploring the opportunities for our company within the Ghanaian space.
Right.
Yeah, and what brought me into agriculture? From a very young age, I was quite interested in agricultural science when I was in secondary school, and I knew that that was where my passion was. But growing up at that time, the oil sector in Nigeria took precedence over the agricultural sector, and the agricultural sector basically collapsed. So, based on discussions with my father, he advised that I shouldn't focus on agricultural science and I should do something else. So I started in communication and then got married and did a degree in human resource management. My broader degree was business administration, but with a focus on human resource management. And I stayed in that field for a very short time, about 2 years, and then moved into more economic and trade policy. I worked for the Dutch government in Nigeria and headed the economic office in Lagos for 4 years plus. And it was in that role I worked a lot with the current CEO of the African Development Bank. He was the agric minister then in Nigeria, and he approached the embassy and the Dutch government to try to create a horticultural framework for Nigeria. And that was my return to agriculture. And then we moved back to the Netherlands, and I went into organic agriculture full-time and did a master's degree in Wageningen University in that field. And my specialization is in soils and soil fertility and agroecology. So that's how I got into this sector. And 2 years ago, 3 years ago actually, I decided to move away from a product-based approach to agriculture to more a knowledge-based approach. And I knew that I wanted to get into agricultural consultancy. And then I joined Delphy about a year and a half ago, and I'm now responsible for the African market and then driving the African strategy for the next 10 years.
So the whole of Africa is listening to you, driving strategy. What would you like the continent to hear from you as Delphy? You have the microphone, the whole continent is listening. What do you want to say?
I would say that the agricultural sector provides a very lucrative, innovative ground for young people, and it's a very knowledge intense sector. So the bright minds and those with bright ideas are able to succeed, but it comes with a certain discipline that has to do with learning and developing yourself and developing your expertise within the very, very wide value chain. There is a place and a space for everybody, and you just need to find where your passions lie, where your knowledge and expertise can fit in within the value chain, from production to post-harvest management to the market. So it shouldn't be looked at with the lens of what some parts of Africa, the level of or the lack of technological applications or knowledge application that goes into agriculture. Agriculture is very, very, very knowledge driven and technologically focused and innovative. And for the African agriculture to grow, the young people need to come up with exciting, innovative solutions to the African problems. And this creates the biggest platform for the young people on the continent.
Absolutely beautiful. Let me touch on women. One of our aspirations is to excite young women about venturing into fields that were previously dominated by men, and showing them that there is no limit to what they can do. They should just dream it, do it. And I like the fact that you see the brightest minds should go there and do big things. I love it. How do we get many more young women to become the next Peace Quadt all over the world, doing great stuff in agriculture along the entire value chain, whether it's in R&D, it's in product development? I interviewed recently Mildred Akutia. She worked with McVitie's and then Heinz, and she was saying, listen, I was there across the world doing stuff, and I'm asking myself, why not in Ghana? She came and started processing cashew, and it's on various airlines. And she says, because I know the science of food, I understand food science and nutrition, I do it with a certain science. It's not just trial and error. And you are saying it's a data-driven, research-driven, knowledge-driven thing, not just some happenstance. How do we get more young women to get excited about this and venture into it?
You could have a policy focus from the government to try to drive women participation in the sector. But already there is a large number of women participation in the sector with growing, with harvesting. But those are low-level applications. So in encouraging women to participate in technology and science, that could open the road for women in agriculture. Also, even women participating and being trained and developed for extension services. That's an area that is very male-dominated within even government policies across the African continent. So to encourage more women to go into extension service participation, and also like you're doing with the MasterCard Foundation, to encourage women to go into entrepreneurship and provide support for them. But very, very intensive training and knowledge is required for that space. And I think that women do have the outlook of care and diligence that is required to succeed in that sector. So I think they should have more courage and be determined, as you say, that there is no limitation to what they can do. Yes, it's a male-dominated space, but it doesn't mean that as a woman you cannot succeed in this sector.
And it's backed by human determination.
Yes.
I love that part. I'm sure it's very much a part of your arsenal as a person.
Yes, it is. It is. And I think when you have that human determination, then nothing stops you, because you understand that it's a journey. There will be challenges, but it's challenges that can be dealt with as they come along.
Which city in Nigeria were you born in? Which part of Nigeria?
I was born in Warri.
Warri.
In the Niger Delta.
Right, I've been
yes,
to Warri.
yes.
So if a young lady, a young person from Warri looked up to you and said, wow, you are operating the global space, traveling across Africa. Tell me one attribute that has been the undergirding philosophy of your life as a professional Peace Quadt. What would it be?
I think God plays a very central part of my life, because it's God that created us. He gives us the talents and the desires that we have, and gives the drive to do what we do. And every human being has a purpose in this world. And when you find it, then you can flourish in it. And for me, that is really, really central to what I do. And the second part is knowledge. Knowledge drives everything that I do. And that has helped me move across from different disciplines into what I'm doing now. And having a good scope of knowledge and depth of knowledge is very important to professionalize what you do.
And you obviously love what you do.
I absolutely love the agricultural sector. I love crops, and I like the innovations and development that come with that. It's almost like being given an empty, plain canvas
to draw.
You can draw and imagine and create things out of it.
It's been a blessing hanging out with you and learning from your experiences.
Thank you.
Thanks for making time within your very tight schedule to do this before you fly back to the Netherlands, and I hope that it's been worth your while.
It has been. I've had a fantastic week.
Wonderful.
In Ghana, and I carry a lot of memories with me back, and I also see the potential that is in this space and in this country and in the people. I think the first potential is the people.
It always starts with the people.
Yes, yeah. The human capital. Yes.
A big thank you to you, Peace Quadt, from the Netherlands, working with Delphy project or manager for Africa for that entity. Let's do this again when you swing by Ghana another time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Right. So this has been Springboard, your virtual university, exploring Africa's agricultural sector and how we can see an uptick, a rise, a growth, a springboard on the wings of agriculture and agribusiness and innovation in the continent. Peace Quadt has been sharing her thoughts based on learnings from the Netherlands and their own agricultural journey starting from after the World War. I trust that these thoughts have been beneficial to you. Let's continue the conversation on social media. But don't forget, human determination driven by innovation, and the two values she left us with, the God factor and knowledge. This is a knowledge-based journey, and you need to equip yourself with the requisite knowledge to do well. My name is Albert Ocran, thanking you on behalf of Team Springboard here at the Springboard Ratio Foundation, our sponsors MTN Ghana and the Enterprise Group, and then our media partners, the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. Not forgetting the power that comes from Ghana Grows, which is a collaboration between the Mastercard Foundation and the Springboard Roadshow Foundation. Once again, my name is Albert, saying God bless you, and God bless you.
Turning point, yeah. He's a turning around.